Are we live? Right, we're live. We're trying again, part 2. Ed, can you do a quick 1 2 1 2 and let's see if
1 2 1 2. Can you hear me?
Yeah, let's see if everyone can hear. Right. Bear with. Ed, one more time. 1 2 1 2.
1 2 test 1 2 3 4 5.
Who is there? Oh, someone says they can hear you. Can you see Ed? That's the question. Can you see him? Can you see him? All good. Someone's put all good. Does that mean we're rocking and rolling? Can you see Ed and can you see me? People comment, let me know before we dive into this, because this is a faff and a half. I can't see him. Good evening, everyone that is tuning in. Good evening. We are having some technical difficulties. I'm trying to get Ed on screen. Can you guys not see him? Ed, can you just say good evening to everybody?
Good evening, everybody. Hopefully you can see me, perhaps not, but I am.
We're hoping that it should be switching when we're talking. Could you see Ed when we were talking then? What a cracking intro to a video this is, by the way, guys. Let me know in the comments. Just type, did you see Ed or not? That is the question. It's like trying to find where's Wally. No. We cannot get Ed on screen. What about if
I can see me? I can see me in the preview now, Andy. So you might have to be quick on the draw.
So, after that faff of an intro, good evening, everyone. Andy, Forest Team Runner here, having some technical difficulties, but thank you so much for bearing with us. I am delighted to be joined tonight by EDDBUD. His YouTube channel will be in the description of this video when it is completed and saved. He has an incredible YouTube channel, and tonight I'm delighted to be joined by him, and we're going to be discussing all things running shoe related, best running shoes of 2019. Tonight, I'm delighted to say that Ed has tried a fair few more shoes than I have, and I'm privileged to have tried the ones I have. So we're going to be picking his brains on some of the really top of the notch. In particular, I'm looking forward to picking his brains on the Next Percents and the Carbon X's and all that good stuff. And maybe some of the shoes that we could give a miss this year in 2019. But before we dive into any of that, Ed, do you want to take it away, mate? Introduce yourself, let everyone know who you are, your channel name, and tell everyone how you got into running and how you got into YouTube.
Fantastic. Thank you, Andy. So channel name is EDDBUD, EDDBUD. I got into running really when I was younger, not really on a sort of routine or regular basis. I really started running to kind of get some fitness back really. When I was at school, I used to do quite a bit of running, bit of cross country, used to really enjoy playing football, all that kind of stuff. Avoided hockey, or always thought that was a little bit dangerous, you know, people with sort of wooden sticks chasing each other around, you know, kind of a dangerous thing. So avoided that. But consequently, as I left school, I got very involved in music. So consequently, not really eating that well, not really doing that much exercise, fitness, things like that. So as I've got older, I've really found that, you know, that's been something I needed to get back. I needed to get back that fitness level. So probably about 2 years ago, really started running regularly. And then this kind of YouTube channel really kind of came around from that. I've always been very interested in running shoes and also basketball shoes, really. I used to love all the different technologies, all the different new innovations that they came out with. So this is very much a lead on from that. I think running shoes and basketball shoes really are at the height of that kind of push for innovation. Sometimes perhaps it goes a little bit too far, but I think they're at the top of that innovation, and there's some really exciting stuff happening. So yeah, I'm just very, very sort of excited about all of that really at the moment. And I've always been a big YouTube fan, if it's sort of running or fitness or music technology and stuff like that. So amalgamating the things together really.
That's awesome, and actually that's a really good point. Maybe we can drop into that comment of pushing innovation to the limit, maybe too far. We'll get into that for sure. Yeah. I think you know what we're talking about here, and I think there's a few. You did a good video on it the other day about carbon plated shoes and that sort of thing. So maybe we'll delve into that a little bit more.
That sounds good, Andy.
Before we dive into events and things, shoes and things. Let's talk events, running. sort of events that maybe you've done this year, just to give people a flavour as to what type of runner you are. Are you a short distance 5-10K runner, middle of the road half marathon, an ultra runner? What's your favourite preference?
I think probably my preference is going to be the half. For me, in terms of my current stamina, my current strengths, really, I think that probably the half is the distance for me. For me, watching your channel recently, Andy, where you've been dedicated in the training in terms of really aiming for that sub-3, when you had that marathon before where it was going so well, and you didn't quite make it. I was I watch all the time. So for me, it was very much how can I get there? Am I ever going to be able to get there? So for me, half. But then again, I love running shorter distances as well. It's nice to be able to push the pace and really try to see if you can increase that shorter distance pace for 5Ks. If I can try and get a little closer towards 19 minutes, I've managed to creep in just under 20, which I never thought I would do that. It's just been a process of slowly improving, working on form, working on breathing. It's just tiny things, isn't it? It's those little gains, those tiny little things. They all add up, as you well know. So half, but then I love running all the other distances as well.
No, that's awesome. I totally agree with you. It's the little things that make the big difference. And for those of you that are watching and maybe new to the channel and either don't know Ed or don't know me very well, we're both tall people. So in terms of form is something we're always working on. Cadence in particular is something that is probably high on our agenda to try and get that quicker turnover. But it's all a learning game. Consistency is key, mate, and that's definitely why you have got to where you've got to with the sub-20, and it will continue to drop down. So let's jump into shoes and all of that good stuff. So if you're in the chat, make sure you leave a comment. We've got the chat open. We'll be answering your questions. Do you have any specific questions tonight, guys, about running shoes this year? I know I've done a video similar to this a few weeks back, but it's really a privilege to have Ed on so that he can give us a bit more of an insight into some of the shoes that have really taken the world by storm. You can probably see in the background of Ed's screen when he's talking, you'll notice some pretty nice shoes. So we will pick his brains on all of those. But I think let's start off with if we maybe categorize these shoes. Let's talk about, let's split it up. Let's talk about racing shoes, your favorite racing shoes, and let's talk about the favorite shoes you've got for soaking up the miles, just easy shoes, shall we say? And then let's talk about the shoes that you've been a bit disappointed with this year. So although we'll talk about the best ones, we'll also talk about the ones that maybe you felt a little bit shortchanged on. So
Haven't lived up to the hype. That's a tough one. Well, one that I've really enjoyed is got to be the Zoomfly Flyknit. So I know, Andy, that you really enjoy running in your Zoomfly, the original. I've got a couple of pairs of those. I have to say they are fantastic. Very slightly different kettle of fish, really, than this one. I do like the Flyknit upper. In terms of the actual base and the width, certainly at this widest point, I would suggest that this is probably one of the best shoes in terms of pace and value that I've come across probably in the last 18 months, actually. I mean, you can pick pairs of these up now for about 60 quid. I mean, you can't lose. I mean, this has got the same carbon plate in as the Vaporfly. It's a little heavier. It's a little more stable. It's got a slightly wider base. It doesn't cut in quite as much here on in the arch. This is a great shoe. I've put about 250 miles into this shoe, and it's still totally wearable. There's a bit of tarnish here, but yeah. So that's a great shoe. I really like this. If you know, viewers out there, do go and check it out. If you can pick one of these up, I don't think you'll be disappointed. I've worn it in race situations. I even wore it on a beach race, actually, Western Supermare. Yeah, it wasn't really the best choice, but it worked. On the sections that were on road, I kind of had a bit of an advantage, really. But yeah, a great shoe. Hard wearing, durable. You can't go wrong.
Fine, so I've got the original here. So this is obviously the non-Flyknit upper. This is the original, but this is such a reliable shoe. I put 500 miles in the original pair of these things when I was Newport Marathon training back in the beginning of the year. Got this second pair, and these now have, after I ran the Abingdon Marathon in them this weekend, they now have well over 200 miles in them. As you said, going strong, very similar outsole pattern. The only problem I have with this one is actually on the other shoe, the right-hand shoe. That, like Kofuzi, I've got a bit of a bubble appearing in the middle there for some reason, but I'm not going to let it bother me. That's the only thing. It's still got a lot of life left in it, and yeah, it's a great shoe.
The Rebel. This shoe has kind of surprised me, actually. I originally got this thinking it was pretty much going to be a tempo shoe. It was going to be one for those kind of faster sessions, but actually I think it's a little bit more versatile than that. I've taken it out on all sorts of stuff, really to test it. You know, easy miles, just some recovery stuff, at more endurance sort of paces. But it works really well for pretty much anything apart from all out. I wouldn't suggest to you that this would work on a 5K. I mean, it's a light shoe, certainly very light, but I don't think it's got the structure you'd need to go past perhaps a half marathon. I don't feel it's really going to work on a 5 either. It's pretty slippery. It can be a little slippery. It's got this weird kind of, it looks like a plate, but it's actually just another section of I think it's like a TPU kind of section, which is supposed to provide some extra kind of propulsion as you push down on the midfoot section. There's a couple of caveats with this one, though. It does come out the box with a ridiculously long set of laces. I've changed these up with a set out of a pair of old Ultra Boosts that I had. And the other thing I found, which is sometimes an issue with New Balance shoes, the insoles really aren't the best at all. In fact, the insoles are actually out of the shoe, and they're here. I just found this shoe way better without the insoles in. It's a slightly odd sizing shoe as well. Not in terms of length, which is always probably an issue that Andy and I have in terms of length. It's getting that length right. They don't seem to have uniform increases in length on some of these shoes. It's a width issue. I found that I really struggled with my pinky on the very edge of the shoe. Taking those insoles out made all the difference. So I just think it's a much more comfortable shoe without the laces in. The laces, what am I talking about? Without the insoles in. I don't want to take the laces out. That would be crazy. It would just fall off.
That's really interesting, because with the Propel, they marketed that shoe as a short on the size, so I've had to scale up. And like you, with the bigger feet, I'm a size 13, and New Balance only do half sizes from 12 onwards. So I think it goes 11 and then 12 and a half, 13 and a half, and 14 and a half. And so I had the 13 and a half, and it was too small. So I actually had to jump to the 14 and a half, which was perfect. Did you find a similar thing with the Rebel? Did you have to size up with that?
No, I went true to size, but I think if I went up at all, there'd be way too much room. I think it would just start to become a shoe that you need to kind of ratchet down with the lacing so much. Those laces that came with it were very odd. They were just really elastic. There was loads and loads of give to them. And as you were trying to tighten the laces up across the top of the forefoot there, you couldn't get it. you'd end up having to stop, kind of retighten as you started running. You know, if you went out and did like a mile warm up or something like that, in that mile you'd undoubtedly have to stop and kind of retie. So that side, it's a comfortable shoe. There's a decent amount of structure at the back here, Andy. The foam is soft. I wouldn't say it's as soft as perhaps something like the like the Turbo with the Zoom X and React kind of sandwich you've got there. But it's a nice soft cushioning. Although you're going to get some weird looks because it has got that bizarre kind of protrusion here, which I have to say I've never really even felt at all while I've been running in it. I'm not entirely sure if it's really needed, you know. Maybe I could get a saw out and sort of, you know, chop it off. It's a bit extreme. It's a bit of extreme. Don't take the saw to your trainers, guys. Don't do that. We're not advising you to do that, but but yeah, I think for the cash, you know, it's one to check out. A versatile shoe. I think that's what everybody's after these days, Andy. A shoe that you can use for several different purposes without having to keep constantly thinking, oh God, which shoe shall I use for this? What shoe should I use for this run? What about this race? You know, what's going to work? People like things that are versatile. I think in all but extremely muddy or very, very wet conditions, this could be a good, quite versatile shoe for people.
Like that. Okay, let's get to some questions because there are some questions coming in. There are a fair few people watching, guys, so if you are watching, make sure you hit that like button. It really helps out the stream, and we will plow through some of your questions, but all those likes make a big difference. Hopefully you can see us all now. So okay, I'm going to fire 2 or 3 questions at you because we're manually swapping over the stream between myself and you. I believe I'm getting the impression in the chat that there's a bit of a lag there or a bit of a glitch in the sound. So I'm going to fire 3 questions at you, mate. If you can answer all 3 of those, that'd be super. Michael has put Asics GlideRide is grabbing his eye at the moment. So if you can give Michael a bit of information about the GlideRide. Rincons versus the Turbo 2s, which one? And Josh wants to know, are any of us going to do, either of us going to do a video on good low price point running gear in the winter? So Asics GlideRide, Rincon versus Turbo 2, and good low cost gear in the winter.
Here is an extremely muddy Asics GlideRide. This thing is absolutely coated. I did a double run today, so I went out very early in this shoe in total pitch black with bats and squirrels and all sorts of things running around my ears. So I took this one out for 4 miles, around about 8 minutes per mile, so just recovery speed for me. You know, Andy and I, as Andy said just now, we've got extremely long legs. Sometimes our cadence perhaps isn't what people would expect. If I drop my cadence any sort of lower, it just feels like I'm walking. I don't know if you get that, Andy, if you try and go into this sort of recovery speed, or most people's recovery speed, we just end up sort of, you know, looking like we're, I don't know, kind of dancing along on the spot or something. This shoe works very well across all sorts of different paces, really, for me, apart from like what I would say all out, you know, that kind of almost that anaerobic kind of pace. When I initially got this out of the box, I wouldn't say I was horrified, but it's a really weird shoe. It does look odd. The curve at the front here towards the toe box area is really pronounced, and it feels very, very stiff and rigid when you first get it. It's a very cushioned shoe, certainly around the edge of the heel area here. It's got that classic kind of Asics. Andy will know this. That classic Asics kind of cushioning. It feels like a very structured and robust shoe. This thing isn't, you know, it's not going to be something you want to wear for a 5K or a 10K race. It's kind of like putting a Russian tank or something onto your feet. It's going to be that kind of vibe. But once you get it on your feet and you start kind of coming to terms with the shoe, I've had no problems getting up to like a 7 minutes 15 per mile pace with this shoe. It just feels great. My legs, I've run what 14 miles today in this shoe, and my legs feel fine. They feel great. You know, they feel really good. It really does propel you forward once you start landing on that midfoot area, just falling forwards with the shoe. It really is a wonderful shoe. I have to say I'm extremely impressed with it. I can see one problem, which I haven't encountered with it until now. Running through a trail area, the last sort of 2-3 miles of that 10-mile run earlier, it is absolutely full of mud all the way up through this middle section here. It is absolutely caked in it. So that's going to take a bit of cleaning, but a great shoe. Andy and I talked a little bit earlier on before the stream about the I can't remember the name of it now, Andy. The other MetaRide, that's the one. How this is kind of like a way improved version of the MetaRide. So I would suggest seek it out if you can. Try it first. I would always say try a shoe if you can. I know it's tough sometimes. We live in the online world, don't we? The worldwide interweb. Try the shoe out if you can, but I think you will be pleasantly surprised. This one's going to eat up miles. It's a great shoe for perhaps almost some tempo paces. I ran at 7 minutes 30 pace earlier on with this quite happily, and the miles just drifted by. Listening to a little bit of Broken Social Scene on the headphones, and the miles just flew past. Really, really enjoyable shoe to wear for those type of paces. There we go. Well, covered in mud now. I haven't tried the Rincon, but one of my local runners, it's Mr. Clayton. He's been using the Rincons. He's got the lovely blue pair. Really, really nice colorway. So he's fed back a little bit of info to me about the Rincons. I think I've been a bad influence on him, Andy. I think I've been influencing him to buy too many new shoes. Actually, everybody keeps saying that to me. Ed, you know, you're bankrupting me. What are you doing? Please try and control yourself. Oh yeah. That's too close to the truth, Andy. Too close. But I digress. Right. So turbos versus the Rincons. Certainly, I would suggest the turbo isn't going to be a shoe for everybody. Some people really dislike the lack of structure. There is a heel counter here, but there's not a lot of structure in the rest of the shoe. If I whip this piece of card out here, there's very little structure here. This shoe isn't going to fare that well in those sort of winter months, really, when things start getting a bit cooler out there. It does get wet. It gets wet quickly. That aside, this is a fast shoe. I've used this for a couple of 10K races recently. One of them was an odd mixture of around about 7.5 K on roads and about 2.5 up towards the old remnants of a castle. So we're talking very boggy, muddy trails, and it handled that really well. Great lockdown across the forefoot. I think personally the Turbo 2 here is the better of the two versions in terms of the lockdown. Lots of lovely room inside here. It's like a Cadillac at the front, you know, loads of space. Your feet aren't going to feel squashed up at all. And if you haven't tried Zoom X foam before underfoot, it just feels great. Again, from a recovery perspective, this one's really, really wonderful. Your legs will feel good the next day. And you've got React on the bottom section, even though it does say Zoom X here. This is the React section. It's very hard wearing, very durable. It's kind of a firmer material than the Zoom X, but those two work so well together on this shoe. In terms of comparing it to the Rincon, I think this is probably a faster shoe. I think you're probably going to get a little bit more in terms of durability from the Rincon in terms of the upper. I have seen a few people find the upper tends to disintegrate a little faster on this shoe. Again, I'm quite a slight guy. I never tend to get too much wear on my shoes. They seem to last that little bit longer for me. But everybody's different, you know, everybody in the world, we're all made up slightly differently, different weights, different heights, different mechanics. So I don't tend to get too much wear or even too much creasing in the midsole here. There's about 120 miles on this one, and there's almost nothing here in terms of wear. It works well on roads, works well on some trails. I've done some hill work in this. One of our local runners, Nathan Gardner, give him a quick plug actually, Flying Fox events. You'll have to do one day, Andy. He does some fantastic events down here in the southwest. Some beautiful medals as well. I did do some hill training stuff with him, and I used the original Pegasus turbo version 1s, and they work well on some trails. You know, I've got to say, a versatile shoe again. Perhaps not as hard wearing as the Zoomfly Flyknit, but yeah, you could race in this with the Rincons. I think my friend's been racing in those. I think he's used them for a couple of races. And he's done some half marathons recently in those, and they worked out okay for him. So not a shoe that I've had personal experience with, but yeah, that's really my take on the Turbo 2. Oh. Yeah, I've been able to do a lot of night running recently. Sort of when you're looking after the small people, you know, you've got to try and usher them to bed. You know, come on, get to sleep. Oh, I don't want to go to bed and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, lots of night running. I've been using a couple of different torches, and seem to have amassed a huge number of different high vis kind of running gear. I'm the sort of guy I really struggle running in sort of full tights or leggings. You know, I just really struggle with it. I know a lot of those guys over in America, you know, they do mock us a little bit, Andy, for wearing the shorts all the time. The short shorts. We are hardy guys here. You know, we're over in England. We've got to be hardy. It's cold. It's not cold, is it really at all? It's actually quite mild here. But yeah, we're so I tend to go with half tights perhaps, and then shorts on top maybe if it's a colder day. But I struggle with those sort of leggings and things. It just doesn't work for me. So yeah, definitely thinking about doing some videos on that. It's something that's quite close to the heart at the moment. It's something that's happening most days actually. So running around in the darkness, you know, that's what we've got at the moment. Listening to the Darkness actually recently as well. Really like their new album. Very good. That's still going.
The blast from the past. I got their first album, but right. Let's whiz through a few. Well, let me just say good evening to everyone, because we're not going to get time to answer everyone's questions. But of course, we've got Kevin, we've got Jay, Josh, Kung Fu, James, Michael, Den, Chris, Michael, Soupy Runs, all of you, good evening. They're agreeing with you on the price point for the Flyknits. They said they're brilliant. People are stocking up on them.
Oh, yeah,
before we go back to any questions,
oh. Between the Carbon X and Next Percent. Now this is a difficult one. Let me grab these two a minute. So Carbon X, if you are a runner that struggles perhaps with stability, if you are somebody that's got perhaps a wider foot, if you're somebody that's perhaps is a little larger on the weight scale, I would suggest that this is probably the better shoe. I think you can probably use this a little bit more as a trainer. I think it's going to be that little bit more durable. That aside, you need to spend a bit of time with it initially. It's quite a rigid and stiff shoe early on. It kind of mellows out a little bit. It's kind of like I kind of think of it a little bit like cookie dough. You have to keep sort of working with it, or perhaps porridge. You've got to keep sort of working with it a little bit. You've got to get the consistency right. This shoe, to me, the first sort of 10 miles, I was kind of thinking, well, what have I got on my hands here? This is a very rigid shoe. It did give me a little bit of knee pain initially. I mean, I'm a guy that's run close to 500 miles, I think it is now, in various different Nike carbon plate shoes. When you include this one into the mix now, it's another 100. I wasn't entirely dead set on it, but as I used it more and more and more for my half marathon training for the Salisbury half marathon, I grew to really, really enjoy it. The drops a little bit lower in terms of the stack height than the next percent, but it's incredibly light as well. I think it's a shoe for those who want a little bit more stability. If you consider this in comparison to this, let me get the angle right. There's a lot more surface area on the Carbon X than there is on the next percent. So,
interesting. Two more things that I'm going to pick your brains on before we go to a couple more questions, and then we'll wrap it up. And guys, if you enjoyed the stream, make sure you hit that like button. I really appreciate it. We said in the beginning, for those of you who've just tuned in, you might have missed it. The last question I'm going to ask you is shoes that maybe you've been a bit disappointed with. But before we go to that, we said about technology. We said about pushing the boundaries. You're holding a pair of Nike Next Percents. And of course, Mr. Kipchoge did something incredible a couple of weekends ago, whenever it was now, the other Sunday, in the Nike Alpha Fly. So it's been dubbed. Patent releases have come out showing how it's been built. It looks like it's got air pockets in cushions, all that sort of stuff. How do I word this in a good way? Is Nike pushing the limits too much? Are shoes going in a direction that become 90% the runner, 10% the shoe, rather than all-out effort? There's a lot of elite runners out there posting their thoughts on Twitter in particular, saying that they will never be seen dead in shoes like that because they want to go out there, give blood, sweat and tears, and know that they have run 100% of that race and not allowed the shoe to dictate any of that to them or given them an aid, a helping hand. They just don't want it. You've got other people that are embracing the technology. I'll be honest with you, I would love to grab a pair of Next Percents, but I'm kind of on the fence. I see both sides. What are your thoughts and opinions? Do you think the Alpha Fly, because I put this on my Instagram, do you think that new one is a bit too far?
That's a very good question, Andy. I think certainly over the last couple of days since I released that video, and my thinking behind that video was I wanted to explore the pros and cons. I wanted to weigh up between the advantages and the disadvantages of that shoe, really. Maybe not just of that shoe either, but of things like the Next Percent. The one thing I thought of was, right, Kipchoge back in 2017, he managed to run 2 hours 25 seconds in the Breaking 2 project. He was wearing effectively a Flyknit version of this, really. It was this outsole, the midsole, with a Flyknit upper, and he managed to, well, he just missed it by 25 seconds, didn't he, basically? So this time round, they've placed him into a even taller midsole. It's got all manner of plates, and it's got tensile air pockets under the ball of the foot. And this time he's managed to run effectively 45 seconds faster. It works out. So it's it's close to what a second per kilometer over the distance. So is it the shoe that's enabled him to do that, or is it the fact that the guy goes out running 120 miles a week on compacted dirt tracks, eating really good things, looking after himself, leading a simple life, honing his body, honing his mind? Is it that that's given him the 45 seconds, or is it the shoe? I'd suggest it probably the training. I think the shoe's a bit of a red herring in this situation. I think it's a bit of a red herring. I think they probably could have stuck him in the next percent and he would have done it. I think the guy is just that good. He's the king, isn't he? He really is the king. I think everybody, regardless of whether you're a park runner and you're happy to get around the course, or you're somebody that's pushing towards 3 hours in the marathon, or you're trying to improve your 10K time. I think he's a guy that you could look at and say, wow, if I take a couple of little things that this guy's doing, mainly just simplifying my life a little bit, or just adding on some extra volume of mileage per week, I think that is the true key to all of this, rather than the shoes. I think the shoes are a bit of a red herring on this occasion.
I like your thinking. That's some positive thinking. Fair play, mate. And you've got a very valid point there. So it could well be the case. We have loads more questions coming in. I do apologise, we're not going to be able to get to all of them. The last question for you, Ed, before we wrap it up and do some quick fire questions at the end for all of these people, is shoes that you've been slightly disappointed with. So guys, if you have any quick fire questions, yes, no answers, get them in the chat now and we'll ask Ed at the end. So shoes you've got this year that haven't quite lived up to the hype. Have you got any?
Just before I answer that one, I'll just let you know I can't see the chat for some reason. It's not there, but so if you fire the questions at me, I'll do my best to answer them. Fantastic. So shoes I've been disappointed with this year. There's one shoe in particular which has disappointed me, considering how much I loved its predecessor. Andy's holding it there, the Zoomfly 3. Now, I don't think this is a bad shoe. I don't think it's a bad shoe. I just don't think it's a step forward for the Zoomfly line. I think it's kind of a step forward and 2 steps back. And when you're a runner, taking a step forward and 2 steps back isn't really something that you want to consider doing. You kind of feel a little bit like you feel a bit of an idiot doing that. So to me, it had hallmarks of being a great shoe, but the propulsive feeling that I had within the Zoomfly original and the Zoomfly Flyknit just don't feel like they're there. I know Mike Kafuzi had some issues with that shoe as well in terms of getting past certain distances. He messed around with some different insoles. I did that. I took them out, I put them in, I tried different insoles, I tried different socks, I tried all sorts of things to like that shoe, and it just wasn't a pleasing shoe to run in. And I think running it for us guys, ladies, it's an interesting thing to do. It's an exciting thing to do. And if you're kind of lacing up a shoe and thinking, this really isn't exciting me. This shoe isn't making me want to go out in the pouring rain and hammer out 8 miles. It's just not. It's not working. It's not a shoe I think I would race in. I would consider racing in the Flyknit version. I consider racing in the original, but the Zoomfly 3, I think they've fouled up. That aside, if I could get my hands on a Flyknit version, I think I would consider testing it out. And that might be happening. So
that would be good, because they do seem to release a lot of Flyknit versions of their shoes. Okay, awesome. Guys, let's fire through some quick questions and then we will wrap it up here, and we will thank Ed very much for his time. Jamie Stewart is in the chat. Good evening, mate. I hope you are well. He's picked up his first carbon plated shoe past week, the Vaporfly 4% Flyknit. He cannot wait to give them a blast. I don't blame you. So Sean UK Hiking said, Jameson, has just dropped a review on the Saucony Triumph. Another brand new foam might be a good one. Now, I saw the caption in the title of this earlier. I haven't watched it yet, but it basically is on the lines of "This is better than Boost." Saucony is a brand I have not tried. Quick answer, mate. Is Saucony a brand on your radar, and do you think you'll be trying it anytime soon?
I think if old Jameson Michael's looking at it and he's come up with quite a considerable statement like that he feels it's better than Boost, well, I'd be certainly very interested to try that out. I've got a pair of the Adios 4s upstairs, which I am kind of just waiting to unleash and try out. And as somebody that's worn Boosts as casual shoes, actually, I'd be quite tempted to test out. Well, this one's destroyed, but I'd be quite tempted to test out something that's better than it. So yeah.
Okay, good stuff. Interesting comments in the chat, actually. Not so much questions, but comments about New Balance and their insoles being a problem. Of course, the beacons, for me, the insoles on my Beacon 2s keep coming out, so I need to super glue those down. You've said the same, well, not the same with your Rebels, but you've removed the Rebel insoles and all of that stuff. And now people are chatting about the god of marathon running, Mr. Kipchoge himself, and debating whether they think it's him or the shoes. There's a good combination of questions. Let me just go back up because there are a fair few. Kevin Scott just bought 2 pairs of the Flyknits because it was a 40% deal, plus he got 30% work discount. Wow.
Wow.
That's impressive. Soupy Runs. He ordered a pair of barefoot trail shoes, planning on starting again from scratch to transform my running technique and to get away from heel striking. Thoughts?
That's an interesting one. I know that kind of technology's moved forward quite considerably. I don't think it's quite as kind of neutral or minimal as it was before. I think there's somebody locally that actually wears those shoes as well, and they're really, really into them. Personally, for me, I'm not sure it would work, but I really like that whole idea of kind of going back and looking at your form. It's almost kind of starting again, as it were, and looking at your form. What can you do to improve? Obviously, those things are hard to kind of get into your fabric. Certainly in racing, I know, Andy, you were talking about towards the end of your race the other day that you were picking out little things like, oh, I can change this, or I've got to improve this. This honing things, I think starting again is quite a daunting thing, but I know it could really come with some incredible benefits, I think, for all of us, by going back and really assessing our form and what we're doing.
And actually, a bit of advice for a lot of you, something that I've found especially as well, running in carbon plated shoes really does change up my form. It actually makes my cadence less, and for me that's something I'm really trying to work on, because ultimately the carbon fiber plates for me propel me forward, make my stride length just that touch longer. Therefore I find it harder to run in work on keeping the cadence up. So for example, I had a 5k race the other week. I got my cadence right up there using the Rincons, and if I'm training in the beacons and the Rincons and the propels, it's very easy for me to work on that cadence. Yet the second I put on the Zoom Flies in the marathon on the weekend, I noticed that my cadence had dropped slightly there. So there's just something to bear in mind. Final question before we wrap it up for the night and we say good night. Jim O'Connor says that Skechers Speed Elite, yes or no? No. Ooh. I don't think you've tried that, but is it on your radar?
Skechers are certainly on my radar. I think it's a good price point. They're not pushing the cost up to a ridiculous level. I kind of like that £100 price point is an interesting one to me. I think that represents some good value there. If you can get massive miles out of a shoe of around about that value, I think that price, I think it's quite a good value. But certainly some Skechers are on my radar. But as we all know, they're a little tougher to kind of get a hold of over in this country. There are some Skechers outlet stores, but they don't always tend to stock those very up-to-date models. It's been a bit of a pain to try and get hold of some of those, but I'm very interested to do that. I think in the coming couple of weeks, I will be running a poll to say, you know, what do you guys want me to test out next? What's going to be the next thing on the feet of EDDBUD? The next ones you want me to deconstruct? So we'll have a bit of a poll soon about that, and maybe we can feature some sketches on there.
Guys, I hope you've enjoyed tonight. I've dropped Ed's channel link into the description below. So make sure you head over if you haven't already and go and subscribe to Ed's channel. He's doing some great things with shoe reviews. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to each and every one of you. Thank you so much for your patience. Of course, patience has been required in the beginning of this stream. If you tuned in late, you won't know what we're talking about. But this has been a difficult one to figure out. But we got there, and it's been an absolute pleasure. Ed, mate, thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to leave? There's a fair few people watching, so if there's anything other last comments you want to leave people, they're still debating Kipchoge and also talking about sketches and price points and all sorts. Anything else you want to say?
I think in terms of running, it's about getting that enjoyment. I think we can get exceptionally obsessed, you know, by the one thing that connects us with the terrain, with the road, with the pavement or whatever. We can become overtly kind of obsessed with that. You know, is this shoe better? Is this going to be better? I think a lot of the time it's a psychological thing, a mental thing. And that if we can sort of prepare and perhaps take away some of those things that, you know, we've seen from Kipchoge and some of his teammates at some of those camps, you know, the simple, very calm preparation. I think that actually really helps when we're prepared sort of mentally, physically, and just kind of doing those sorts of things. Really, that's the biggest effect for me, regardless of all these shoes and everything. That's how the biggest single effect for me is preparing for those races, and really that's enabled me to enjoy the experience of going to perhaps a race and then performing better because of that.
That is some very sound advice. Guys, please drop a thank you in the comment to Ed. And guys, thank you so much for tuning in. It's been another pleasure just talking to you tonight, answering some of your questions. Apologies we couldn't get through all of them, but it's been great to see you all in the chat. If you haven't already hit like, do hit that like button. And yeah, Ed, mate, thank you so much for your time tonight. I really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure having you on the channel. Hopefully we can do it again soon.
Absolutely.
And we can catch up maybe in 6 months or so and discuss the next batch of shoes that you've tested and I've tested, and we can compare notes and do it again. So guys, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. If you did enjoy this video, make sure you give it a like, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel for regular running content. Make sure, as I said, you subscribe to Ed's channel. Link is in the chat right now, and also it will be in the description of this video. Don't forget to do that. And of course, without further ado, we will both see you next time.